guys? It's Sean and Mario here from Chrome Diggers. We're getting ready to go fishing tomorrow, and we just kind of wanted to go through what we're going to be using tomorrow, show you guys how we set some of our stuff up and what we've had luck with. So we're going to be float fishing tomorrow, and we kind of run different setups, so kind of want to show you guys the different ways to do it. Why one way might be different or work better than the other. We'll also go through some like jigs. We'll also go through beads and the different types of beads, heavy beads, glass beads, ceramic, plastic, acrylic, even some little tips and tricks here, what we do as well. So we'll dive in and get a little close here and show you guys what this is all about.
What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going over the sliding bobber setup and why I like to use it. What we have here is high-vis 30-pound braided line, and I go down to the bobber stop, and then from here I go down to a very small bead right there, and then I go down to a corky. I like to use bright colors in low visibility or very dark days. This comes in real handy, so you can keep track of your bobber, seeing when it's going back and forth, when it's dragging on the bottom. It also tells you a lot there. And then I go down to another bead, so that way this doesn't go past the corky here and past the bobber stop. And I got a sliding bobber here. This is a 3/8 ounce Biomac sliding bobber, and after that I go down to another small bead. These beads here protect your knots, so that way your knot doesn't get damaged and also your bobber doesn't get damaged. I like to use this setup here because you can adjust your depth when you're on the water. So let's say you know if you're fishing a hole that's 3 feet deep, you adjust that to the depth. And if you move spots and you start fishing a hole that's 5 feet deep, then you can move your bobber stop up, and then you can fish different depths with the same setup. Right now I have this 3/8 ounce, and you have to match the weight. So I have a 1/4 ounce inline weight, and then what I have here, after your weight, you want to put about maybe 2 to 3 feet of leader line. I like to use 8 to 10 pound, either Seaguar or P line, 100% fluorocarbon. And what I like to do is to be able to match all this weight so that your bobber flows very naturally, is put a few split shots about maybe 12 inches above your jig, and just put like 3 small split shots just to keep the line straight, so that way it's not dragging behind the bobber or going in front of the bobber with the current. And then at the very bottom I like to use a jig, and this is an 1/8 ounce jig. And then from here sometimes I like to run a trailer about 8 to 10 inches down to a bead. And what we have here is this is Mr. Derek's Beads, and he was nice enough to send us a large variety of colors and styles of beads. So he's got glass beads, acrylic, and he's got UV, and I believe he's coming out with some new ones here on his website. Just go to mrderekbeads.com. I believe that's the website, and he's got a large selection in colors that you can check out on there, and I'm sure you'll find something that you like. Here next we're gonna have Sean talk about his setup, and we'll go from there.
What's going on, guys? All right, so that was Mario's setup, so we're gonna jump in here and I'll show you guys how I like to set my rods up. So starting with my bobber here, I use a fixed bobber. So unlike Mario's that adjusts and slides up on his, this one's in a fixed position. So there's advantages and disadvantages. Sometimes, like if I'm fishing deeper water or if I'm moving a lot, I'll fish with a sliding bobber. And the reason for is your bobber will be down close to your weight here. So when you're casting, you don't have to have as big a rod or as long as rod to be able to cast and be able to go, say if it was a 10-foot spot you were trying to get down to. But on my rod here, I use like an 11-foot rod, so I used a fixed one. And so what I'll do is you can just slide it here and adjust it based on what depth you want. So they're pretty simple. You can switch them out real quick. So this is the bobber here. I've got some surgical tubing that I've threaded onto my main line. Also, for main line, I'm using a 10-pound floating mono line by Blood Run. But what you do is you got your surgical tubing on here, and you'll just stick your bobber in there. And you come down, put the other surgical tubing on the end of it, and now your bobber is secured on your line. And then you can just grab your bobber and slide it up and down based on whatever depth you want. Also, another little trick I like to do is you can pick up these like weight stops or bobber stops. But what I'll do is, if say I'm using like a sliding bobber, I'll use one on the top and then my bead and then my bobber. Or for example, if I'm using my fixed float here, I'll put it right at the end, below, right above my weight here. And the reason for is, like, let's say you snag up and you have to break off. What this will do is, if you do break off, most times this little bobber stop will stay on there. And if you're using a sliding bobber, or even this I've had slide down before, it'll keep from losing your bobber. And bobbers are not cheap, so you know, it's just a little safety net if that happens. So once again, after my bobber, I'll come down to my weight here. You want to use, you know, your weight, whatever is ideal for the bobber that you're using, and the weight that's going to be under the bobber as well. And it all depends, you know. Sometimes if I'm fishing real deep, I'll use some just lead that you can pinch on the line. But if I'm fishing shallow holes, I'll keep this real small and tight and compact so that I can get down into, you know, 2-3 foot hole. Where we're going tomorrow, they're going to probably be tucked up pretty close to the bank, and you don't have to go out and fish the middle of the river. And I'll show you here. So I like to run generally a glass bead for my first bead. So I have my hook tied on here, and then I will use a bobber stop, and then I'll slide my bead on that. So my bead actually is sliding on my line. You know, I just find that I don't get tangled as much, and the reason you want to use the bobber stop too is when the fish comes to eat this egg, it's going to suck the egg in its mouth, and if you have this bead sitting on your hook, there's a good chance that the fish is going to swallow the whole hook, and it's going to be very hard to get it out. So if you get on a native fish or something like that, it's going to be very hard to catch and release those. So by putting your bead a little bit higher here, when the fish comes to eat the bead, it leaves the hook right outside the mouth, and when you set the hook, it'll catch it right in the side of the lip, which is ideal. So that's one way to peg a bead, and I'll show you here because I'm going to set this up for tomorrow, and I'll show you kind of how I tie into my trailer. So we already have this tied into our weight here, and then another cool little thing I like to do is I have these all pre-tied up. These little pips boxes, and I'll run these in my fanny pack, but I'll mark them like this is 8-pound fluorocarbon. You just grab your hook, pull out your leader, and pretty simple here. The same knot you would use like a fisherman's knot to tie this hook on. You just come into the shank of this hook here, and you would tie on. On this particular hook, I've got them already pre-done up with the bobber stops to actually stop the egg, or I mean the bead, excuse me. But I'll show you another technique too to put the bead where you want it on your line. So So you thread your bead on. Now you can either leave that bobber stop there, or say you didn't have a bobber stop, you can buy what they call bead pegs, which are real simple to use too. You can buy these in packs. I think these ones are made by Brad's. But you just rip one of these off here, and you'll go ahead and thread it right through the hole with the line in there. And then you just pull on this. Pull it down until it gets nice and tight in there. And then you come back with your snips. Make sure you don't snip your line. And take the excess off. And now your bead is actually fixed onto your line, and then you can set it and adjust it where you want it. Generally, I like to set my bead about 3 fingers from my hook. So if I got my hook here and my bead, you know, if I'm out there, I'll have 3 fingers from the top of the hook to where I want the bottom of my bead, and that works really well for me. But yeah, you just take the end of your line here, you put your bead on first, and that's what you call a trailer. So, you know, sometimes I like just to run what I call bare, and that's just one hook or one bead or a jig. But it's late winter steelhead fishing right now, and so we're gonna try some beads tomorrow. But this would be what we call like a trailer rig. So you have your main bead down to your hook, and then your trailer's tied to the hook. You come down to your next bead, and then your last hook. So there's lots of different ways to set it up. That's just some of the ways we like to set it up, and we'll see how it does tomorrow. Also, while we're here, I'm going to talk about Mr. Derek's beads here. So after we get done doing our fishing trip here, we actually are going to do a giveaway. Not sure how we're going to do it yet. We might do something fun for you guys to guess, and then you know, maybe split it up into like 2 different prizes or one big prize. We haven't decided yet, but when we do decide that, stay tuned, and then make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, and we'll get that guys going for you. So check us out tomorrow on the water, and we'll see you out there. Chrome Diggers out.